Looking to get started? EAA has more than 900 local chapters worldwide that will get you involved in grassroots recreational aviation in your own backyard. EAA chapters offer a variety of programs and resources for all interest levels. Find a chapter near you at eaa.org/findachapter.
Hey everyone, I'm Steph Strickland, super excited to host this first pilot profile as part of our hangar flying segment for EAA's Spirit of Aviation Week, big part of EAA Together. I want to introduce to you right now someone who is a fantastic pilot and an all-around awesome human being, Mindy Lindheim. Hey, how are you doing?
I'm so good. Thanks for having me.
Join. So for those of you who want to follow her on Instagram, she is Schmindy with 3 eyes. So how did you come to that handle?
It was so random when Instagram came out. I wasn't even a pilot, so me and my girlfriend were both making our Instagram accounts, and I was like, I don't want to just have Mindy, and she's like, push Mindy on it, and then now it's been, I don't know how many years, and I'm stuck with it.
Well, it works, and you have a very engaged, excited following, and I count myself among that, have had a chance to watch you continue to push yourself in the flying that you do in really cool and amazing ways. Before we talk about that, I want to ask you about your personal experience with EAA AirVenture. I worked with you last year. We had this really cool social media panel. What's your favorite part about EAA AirVenture?
Well, I've never got to go as an attendee. I've worked it every time I've been. I think I've been 4 years now. This year would have been my 5th year. Going with Textron, so I go work in the booth, and it's an enjoyable show. There's some shows that we go to that's such a drag. It's very dry, but everyone there is so high energy. Everyone is friendly, so I get to sit by the planes and meet the most awesome people at EAA.
I think the scale of it just blows my mind. Like you put on, when they say wear flats, they mean it.
Yes, definitely. You have to wear comfortable shoes. And if you can get a hold of a golf cart, you're VIP, and that's the best way to see the show.
Stick with me, Mindy, because I have managed to get a golf cart, actually thanks to the folks at EAA, but probably because I have to run like all over the place as fast as I can. When we know what you do for your profession, because we have a chance to see that and interact with that, but I do want to ask you how you got that job in the first place, because it seems really cool.
Gosh, it was one of those right place, right time, and pretty much the right qualifications. You know, kind of everything kind of hit at the same time. I was working on my master's at this time, and working in charge of an event that brought together a lot of aircraft manufacturers and airlines. We were talking about how to train future pilots. This was at Embry-Riddle, where I went to college. And so I got to meet all these awesome point of contacts at all these companies. At that time, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my career. I wasn't too into the airline thing. It's just not really my style. So I was thinking corporate, business, aviation, that type of thing. And so these guys that came, and it was all guys. I was about to say guys or girls, but it was guys. They came to this event, and they brought planes to show. There was Piper, Diamond, Cirrus, Textron. So I'm like, you guys just got to fly these new planes here, and you hang out here in Daytona Beach for 2 days at this event, and then you fly it back home. This is what you do. They're like, yeah, this is our job. We show the planes, we sell them. So I was completely hooked whenever I met these people, and met, like I said, a contact at Textron who mentioned they were having an opening, and normally they don't hire externally, but I was just at the right place at the right time, so it all worked out.
When you say you had the right qualifications, at some point that started with your very first flight and your very first solo and your very first check ride. How did you find your way into aviation? And take me back to that first experience when you learned how to fly.
I started flying at Embry-Riddle, and so my very first flight in a small aircraft was my very first training flight. I was not brought up in an aviation family. No one in my family knows a lick about aviation. So it was actually, that's a point to bring up. That was kind of difficult getting into aviation, not having been around it. It was very, very, very Chinese to me, that, you know, foreign language to me, because I did not understand anything. And so I think it was really important that right away I found a really good mentor. There was a professor at Embry-Riddle that kind of took me under his wing and he was in aviation for a long time, so I had a mentor that helped me through all of that. But I got into aviation kind of randomly. I wanted to go into medicine. I started reading about aerospace medicine, started reading about pilots, just kind of kept going deeper into that rabbit hole at 3 a.m. So I'm reading about pilots, like, whoa, this sounds awesome. Instead of taking care of pilots, that'd be cool to actually just be the pilot. I ended up talking to a neighbor of mine who was a Delta pilot who's like, yeah, there's a school, Embry-Riddle. I was living in Orlando at the time. He's like, it's only an hour and a half away. Go check it out. So I did. And when I did the campus tour, I was hooked. It's such a cool industry.
Were you nervous at all during your first solo or your check ride?
During my check ride, yes. I feel like I had a normal amount of anxiety for my solo, but I was, I think I was ready. I wasn't terrified, just like a normal amount, which I think is a healthy amount. But check ride was scary for sure. I had to reschedule my private pilot check ride 6 times for weather, and they never canceled it till the morning of. So each time I had to do my flight plan for the cross country and do all the pre-check ride jitters the night before 6 times. By the 6th time, I guess I was like, all right, this is probably not going to happen. So maybe that helped.
So Mindy, I have to ask you to take me through your check ride. It's something as a perpetual student pilot that I am keenly interested in. Take me back to that time where you did it. You basically got your appointment with your DPE and you went. Were you nervous?
Yeah, very nervous, of course. I think everyone is. And then we ended. He didn't tell me right away that I passed. It wasn't like, congrats, gave me a handshake. We just walked back into the flight building silently. We came in. He starts filling out the books because Embry-Riddle has like their own internal check ride guys. And they do these all day long. So I feel like it's like not a thing to him anymore. And we're going in, he's doing paperwork. I'm like, so, is this good? Did we pass? He's like, yeah, I'm filling out the paperwork. I was like, okay, you could have told me.
That's awesome. And then from there, you now fly all kinds of different airplanes. List the different airplanes that you've flown for me.
Well, the ones that I currently fly is the Cessna piston line that we make right now, which is the Skyhawk, the 182, and the Turbo 206. I'm also a demo pilot on the Beechcraft Bonanza and the Beechcraft Baron. I personally own a Sport Cub, a Cub Crafter, and then I'll fly just about anything else that I can get my hands on with friends. So there's some other random ones trickled in there, but those are the usual.
I want to talk about actually your personal plane. Your plane's name is Dreamsicle, which is, I think, evident if you've seen it by the color and what I can only describe as a perpetual smile on the engine cowling for the intake. I think it's completely awesome. That was your transition to Tailwheel, was your personal airplane, right?
Yes. So I had been working with a friend who's a non-CFI. He has a J3 Cub. So I took some flights with him. He's really experienced. He started to teach me the lay of the land with tailwheel flying. And then we decided that we wanted to buy a plane, and the tailwheel's on the table. I'm like, all right, well, obviously I have to get my tailwheel endorsement. So I went to my neighbor's house. Well, my husband dropped me off on the 4-wheeler at my neighbor's house. We live in Georgia. And I went and got my tailwheel endorsement in his J3. And only a week later, I was bringing home our own plane. I went to pick it up by myself. I did my little insurance checkout. I needed an hour with an instructor, and then I needed an hour of solo time. So I left the instructor and flew solo for an hour, and then came home and landed with it. And that was my very first time flying solo in a tailwheel.
Okay. That's one of the most incredible. Was landing, all right, help me understand. So as someone who is actually, as you and I have talked about this, I'm super fascinated by tailwheels. You're coming into your home grass strip, and this is where we really get into the hangar flying portion of this. You're coming home into your grass strip, and it has got to be just an incredibly different kind of flying. What's going through your mind as you're getting ready to land?
Yes, it wasn't like check ride jitters or anxiety or anything like that. I was so happy, and I landed and started taxiing, and I saw my husband waiting on the ramp, and just tears started coming out. I'm just like, I'm home with my own airplane.
That's awesome. And I think it's interesting too, your husband is not a pilot, so you fly him around all over the place.
Yeah, so he wants to be a pilot, and we're working on that, especially now that I have my own plane. He's logged, I don't know, at least 20 hours in the past couple weeks, so he's really gaining a lot of experience. So, but yes, I'm the pilot. He's an air traffic controller for Atlanta Center, so we have a pretty cool dynamic. Especially when I get to fly through his airspace and talk to him, it makes my heart melt. I love to hear him work. I'm so proud of him. And it is really cool when I come home, like, oh, like when you were talking to this guy, like, why did you give him that crazy vector all of a sudden? And I get to hear the back end stories whenever I come home, which is pretty cool. Or he'll be like, why was everyone wanting to deviate? I saw nothing on the radar. I'm like, well, there was this huge buildup. Like, so we can share these stories, which is just really, really awesome.
If I was flying my ATC husband around, I would make him do all of the radio calls. I'd be like, I'm going to fly the plane. You make all the calls.
Yes, he definitely picks up the slack in that department.
Was buying a plane challenging?
Yes and no. So I sell planes for my profession. That's what I've been doing for about 4.5 years now. And so it was more difficult than I thought it was going to be, though. And, I sell new planes, so there's a different dynamic when buying a used plane. There's a lot more things that come into the equation. But as far as, defining my mission and budget and all that, I knew those steps I had to take. So that's where my expertise from my profession came in. But finding the right plane definitely takes time. It was discouraging a lot. I would find a plane that I absolutely loved. And part of buying a plane, at least for me, was having a network of people I trusted to double check my work. Like I would send the listing to a few friends and say, hey, can you look over the logs? Am I missing something? And it seemed like every time I found a plane I fell in love with, someone would find something wrong with it. And so it was just like, to the point where I'd find one and be like, I don't even get excited about it until I found the right one. It checked all the boxes. Everyone was happy with it. And it was an easy yes when I found the right one.
That is something that's interesting because you and I have talked about this. It checks all the boxes. You bring the airplane home, and then all of a sudden you start to realize, wait, I've added a couple more boxes. And You talked about this, like talk about the compromise of plane ownership, because no one airplane is going to do everything.
Exactly. And that's just the mindset you have to have. So when you're looking for a plane, obviously for me, it was writing down literally what I wanted. And I would find a plane and literally be checking boxes. But there's some boxes that you have to realize that need to be negotiable at least. Some are non-negotiable and some are negotiable. So, we would love to have had a 4-seater, but a 2-seater was fine too, because we know it's going to be really rare if we bring people with us. It's mainly going to be me and my husband. So stuff like that was negotiable. And if you were to ever hit every single box, you're going to way over purchase for your daily mission. You really have to fit it to, at least what I tell my customers is 80% of the time, 80% of your mission is what you should be trying to match. If once a year you want to take 6 people, that's when you go charter a plane or rent a plane. But if 80% of it is just you and your husband or wife, then that's what you should be looking at.
I love that you start with husband on that. I just think it's cool. You're like, I've got this airplane. I mean, if your husband, wants to bring his buddies, I want to know about give someone like myself who is really interested in flying and who's interested in tailwheel flying, but is intimidated based on everything I've heard. As someone like yourself who has all this tricycle experience, what advice would you offer for student pilots out there as they're trying to decide which type of airplane they want to learn to fly in?
Yeah, the tailwheel transition I thought was going to be a lot more difficult than what it was. And that's highly dependent on the model of aircraft you choose to learn in. So some tailwheel planes are really finicky. They're really difficult to land and taxi, and they want to spin around on you. Some of them are really stable and built for more training scenarios, like the J3, J5 Cub or the Sport Cub like I have are very forgiving. And it was very easy to learn. And then you work your way up baby steps into those bigger, beefier tailwheel planes that might be a little bit trickier for a novice.
I want to ask you about what it's like to live on a grass strip.
Oh my gosh.
What's that like?
It is incredible to be making coffee and then you hear someone crank up, and by the time you finish your coffee, you hear them doing their engine run up, and then you're on the porch by the time they take off and get to wave goodbye. And we get to have a bunch of friends fly in, and we'll grill out for lunch, and some friends will fly in. Sometimes friends fly in just randomly. I don't even get a text. They're just on my ramp. I'm like, hey. And I love that style. I mean, we're Southern, so we're a door is always open type of family. We're not the type where you have to make an appointment. You can just drop by, and that's just kind of the lay of the neighborhood. So everyone here, it's kind of the hangar rule. And I think this applies everywhere. If your hangar door is open, that means anyone is welcome to come in. If it's after hours, come in and have a beer. If we're working on planes, come in and help us. Like, just the open hangar door rule. So we all apply to that. And just at the last neighborhood we lived in, it wasn't a fly-in neighborhood. It was a very stock neighborhood. And I didn't even know my neighbors' names. They wouldn't wave to us. We wouldn't wave to them. We just come home, shut the garage, and that was it. But now we have all this big community and our friends that live here. Now our neighbors are our friends. And I talk to at least one or two of my neighbors every single day. Like, they're everyday friends.
You have had some really cool people fly in, people who are notable on Instagram. Mel is a great example. Tell me about what that's like to connect with other aviation influencers at your house on your own grass strip.
It makes it so easy, especially like with the locals that are flying around. And even if I haven't met them before, hey, drop by. We're all sitting here in the hangar just talking. Why don't you drop by? And they do. And it's just an awesome meeting place where we all have our common shared interests, and they come and want to look at my plane. I want to look at their plane. And it just makes the conversation so easy.
What is it? What does it mean to you to be able to fly an airplane?
It means everything. It means freedom. I mean, our entire life is centered around aviation. I work in aviation. My hobby is aviation. We got married at an aviation museum. I mean, we live and breathe it. So without aviation, I don't really know what we would be doing. I hope it would be just as fulfilling, but I really can't promise that.
For someone who is out there watching, who maybe is trying to get a family member into aviation, what would you say to that family member who's watching, who's maybe thought about flying, not really sure? What encouragement would you offer them?
To go fly with that family member that you know that's a pilot, or if you have a friend that's a pilot and is willing to take you up, or go pay for a discovery flight, because reading about it and watching it online, as good as all the YouTubers are nowadays, is just not the same as actually going and doing it yourself. So until you go do it yourself, it's difficult to make the sale sometimes, because it is expensive and it is a time-consuming hobby. But once you get to take the controls, it's completely different.
Mindy, you are amazing. We have so much more content in store for the EAA AirVenture Spirit of Aviation Week. It has been a joy to do this pilot profile with you as part of our Hangar Flying series. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I look forward to watching all the other ones.
Thanks. All right, everyone, stay tuned. Much more in store.